I always thought I understood my husband very well, Ethan. We had been together for 5 years, married for 3, and I believed our relationship was built on trust and mutual respect. But in the blink of an eye, that illusion shattered. If someone had asked me a year ago what I would do if I found out my husband was secretly marrying someone else, I would have said that I'd leave him, no questions asked. But what if that someone else was not just a stranger, but someone who had been my closest friend for over a decade? Still can't believe how it all unfolded. It started with a simple invitation, a wedding invitation to be exact. Ethan had received an email one evening from his mother's side of the family about a ceremony that was taking place in a church downtown. The message was brief, not too formal, just a note saying, "Join us for a special day, a day of love." I ate first. I thought it was just another one of those random celebrations that some extended relatives held. Nothing important, nothing to get worked up over. But something nagged at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. I brushed off the thought, knowing my husband had been under pressure with work and the recent family drama. So, I told myself to stop being paranoid. Maybe they were just inviting everyone, like always. But then, a couple of days later, as I scrolled through my phone over lunch, I saw something that made my heart drop. A photo, a simple snapshot, but one that tore through the fabric of my understanding of everything. It was a picture of Ethan standing at the altar, not with me, but with Olivia, my best friend. My hand shook as I zoomed in, my stomach twisting. Ethan, in a dark suit, smiling as if he had just won a victory, standing next to Olivia, who was dressed in white, felt like I was drowning, the world around me blurring. I knew, deep in my gut, what this meant. My husband and my best friend. How could this happen? I thought about every little thing that had felt off recently, the distance between us, the long hours he spent working late, the way Olivia's comments had started to feel less like friendly teasing and more like something else. But I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. We drove to the church. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached, my mind racing with a mix of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. What was I supposed to do? Confront them now? Wait for some explanation? No, this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was real. I could feel the truth sinking in with every mile. As I parked outside the church, I saw them. Ethan and Olivia, standing at the altar, smiling at each other as if the world didn't exist, as if I wasn't out there, watching them. I froze for a moment, my breath caught in my throat. This couldn't be real, but it was. Ree walked through the doors of the church, the noise of the ceremony echoing in my ears. The whispers of people around me were a distant hum. All I could see, all I could focus on, was Ethan, my husband, and Olivia, the woman I had trusted more than anyone in my life. They were exchanging vows. They were getting married. The room went silent when Ethan caught sight of me standing in the doorway. His face went pale. His eyes widened with panic as I took a step forward. Olivia turned to look at me, her expression unreadable. And then, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I took a step forward, my voice shaking with fury and disbelief, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice cracking. Ethan stammered, his mouth opening and closing, trying to form words. Olivia stood there, looking as if she had seen a ghost. I can explain," Ethan began, but I didn't let him finish. "No!" I shouted, cutting him off. "You don't get to explain this. You've been lying to me, to both of us. You're married to her now? My best friend?" Tears blurred my vision as I looked at them, both standing there, dressed in wedding attire, surrounded by guests who had no idea what had just been revealed. The betrayal was overwhelming, the sting of the hurt too much to bear. And then, to my horror, Ethan spoke the words I never thought I would hear from his lips. "We were planning on telling you later. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen." "Later?" I repeated, my voice a mix of disbelief and growing rage. "You were planning to tell me later, after you had already made this choice? After you've been lying to me all this time?" Three could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, but I didn't care. All I could see was the man I married, the man who had promised me forever, standing next to the woman who had been my closest friend for years. A woman I had confided in, laughed with, and trusted. Tears started to well up in my eyes, and I turned and walked out of the church. I could hear Ethan calling after me, but I didn't stop. I needed to get away, to process, to breathe. This was it, the end of everything I had known. The man I had loved, the woman I had trusted, both of them betraying me. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. My life was never going to be the same again. And as I drove away from that church, my heart heavy with grief and rage, one thought echoed through my mind. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted them both? But it wasn't over. No, not yet. This was just the beginning. 3 didn't know what to do or where to go. My world felt like it was caving in around me, but the one thing I was certain of was that I couldn't go back to that house, the house that was supposed to be our home, the place where I had imagined we would build a life together, with love and trust. But now, it was nothing more than a memory, a symbol of everything that had shattered. I drove aimlessly, my mind consumed by a whirlwind of thoughts. I thought I had known Ethan better than anyone. I thought our bond was unbreakable. But now I was left with nothing but a cold, bitter truth. After that moment in the church, I couldn't bring myself to face anyone, especially not Ethan. I needed time, but I knew deep down that time wasn't something I could afford. I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. The betrayal wasn't just from Ethan, it was from Olivia too. She had been my closest friend for years, my confidant, the one I had trusted more than anyone. How could they do this to me? How could she betray me in such a cruel and calculated way? 3 went back to my apartment, alone, with the deafening silence of the empty space surrounding me. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. It felt like my entire life had been turned upside down in an instant. How was I supposed to trust anyone again? How was I supposed to trust Ethan, the man who had sworn his loyalty to me, only to turn around and marry the one person I thought I could count on? The tears that had been threatening to spill earlier finally broke free, and I let them fall without trying to stop them. I didn't have the energy to be strong anymore, but as I sat there, drowning in my own sorrow, something inside me shifted. A flicker of anger sparked deep within me. I had been the one to give everything to this relationship. I had sacrificed so much to make it work. I had put up with so much of Ethan's selfishness, his constant prioritizing of his family over me, his constant apologies that never seemed to be followed by real change. And now, this was the final straw. Wasn't going to let them get away with it. Pulled out my phone, shaking with a mix of fury and determination. I had to confront them. Confront both of them. Ethan and Olivia thought they could pull this off without any consequences. But they were wrong. I wasn't going to be the one left in the dust. Not this time. I couldn't just let them waltz into my life and destroy everything I had built. I wasn't going to be the victim. I was going to take back control. 3 dialed Ethan's number, my hands trembling. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail. "Ethan," I started, my voice trembling with rage. "I'm done. I can't believe what you've done. You think you can just marry her behind my back and everything will be fine? Well, guess what? It's not. I'm coming over there. We're going to talk, and we're going to do it right now." Hung up the phone and grabbed my keys. The car ride was agonizingly slow, the minutes ticking by like hours. I knew what I had to do, but the uncertainty still lingered. I didn't know what would happen when I walked through that door. I didn't know what Ethan would say or how Olivia would react, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to leave without answers. When I arrived at Ethan's house, I felt a wave of nausea hit me as I pulled into the driveway. There it was, his mother's house, the place where he had been hiding, plotting, and planning behind my back. It felt like a physical weight on my chest as I walked up to the front door, my heart pounding in my ears. I wasn't sure I was ready for this confrontation, but it had to happen. 3 knocked sharply on the door, my hand clenched into a fist. A few seconds later, the door opened. Ethan stood there, looking surprised but also guilty. His eyes flickered when he saw me, and for a moment, I thought he might back away, but he didn't. "Audrey," he began, his voice strained. "No," I cut him off, my tone sharp. "No more lies, no more excuses. I want the truth, Ethan. I want to hear it from you right now. Why didn't you tell me?" His eyes shifted nervously, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't interested in hearing his excuses anymore. I knew the truth. I had seen it with my own eyes. I had watched him betray me, and no amount of talking could fix that. I didn't want to hurt you, he said finally, his voice faltering. I didn't know how to tell you. It was a mistake, Audrey. Please, just let me explain. 3 laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. A mistake? You think this is a mistake? This wasn't some accident, Ethan. You planned this. You betrayed me with Olivia. You lied to me for months, and now you want to act like it's just some mistake? He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't let him. I'm done, Ethan. I'm done with all of it. I don't want your explanations. I don't want your apologies. I want to move on, and I'm going to do that with or without you. Ethan's face paled as he took a step toward me, reaching out to grab my arm. Wait, Audrey, please. We can fix this. We can, too. No, Ethan, it's over, I said firmly, shaking off his hand. I'm not going to be part of your game anymore. I'm done. 3 turned and walked out the door, not looking back. I could feel the weight of the decision, the finality of it, but also a sense of liberation. I had taken control. I had done what was right for me, and now it was time to move on. IAs. I walked away from his house. The adrenaline started to fade, and a sense of calm washed over me. I had just taken the first step in reclaiming my life, and I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I had made the right choice. Ethan and Olivia would have to deal with the consequences of their actions. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. Not anymore. He could feel the weight of my anger pressing down on me as I walked away from Ethan's house. The crisp air didn't seem to help clear the fog in my mind. I wanted to scream, but what good would that do? I had to act. I knew that if I didn't take control of this situation, Ethan and Olivia would continue to tear my life apart. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice. Reed drove aimlessly, my mind racing. I tried to make sense of what had happened, of how everything had gone wrong. Olivia had been my closest friend. We shared everything. I trusted her with my secrets, my fears, and my dreams. She had been there for me when Ethan and I went through tough times, always offering advice, always supporting me. Now I was left to wonder if she'd been playing me from the start, using her friendship as a cover for her own deceit. And then there was Ethan. How could he do this to me? I had supported him, loved him unconditionally, and all this time, he had been hiding his true feelings for Olivia. He had married me, made vows to me, while secretly falling for the one person I had trusted the most. The silence in my car was deafening as I reached my apartment. I didn't know what I expected when I pulled into the parking lot, but there was no sense of relief, no safety. I was still trapped in a web of lies, betrayal, and heartbreak, but I couldn't keep letting this consume me. I had to fight. I had to show them that they couldn't destroy me. They may have broken my heart, but they hadn't broken my will. The next morning, I found myself sitting in front of my laptop, trying to make sense of what my next steps should be. I thought about the evidence I had, about the things I had seen, the things I knew. Ethan thought I didn't know about his secret marriage to Olivia. He thought I was in the dark, but I wasn't. I had been watching, listening, waiting for the moment to act. I had already taken the first step by confronting him, but now it was time to hit back harder. Called Evan, my only trusted ally in all of this. He had been my coworker for years, and I had never had to question his loyalty. Unlike Ethan, Evan had always supported me, even when things got difficult. He was the only one who understood my need to take control, to not just sit back and let Ethan and Olivia walk all over me. Evan, I started, my voice steady but firm. I need your help. I have to make sure they pay for what they've done. I can't just walk away. They need to face the consequences. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, but I didn't care. Are you sure about this? He asked. This is going to get messy. I'm sure, I replied, my resolve hardening. They took everything from me. My trust, my life, my peace of mind. I won't just let them walk away. I want to make sure they understand the damage they've caused. Evan sighed. All right, what do you need me to do? 3 explained my plan to him. It wasn't just about getting back at Ethan or Olivia. It was about setting things right. I wanted the truth to come out, and I wanted them to face the fallout. If they thought they could use their position to manipulate and control me, they had another thing coming. Over the next few days, I gathered everything I could, messages, photos, anything that would expose their betrayal. I knew I had to act quickly before they could cover their tracks. Every moment felt like a ticking clock, with Ethan and Olivia playing their roles, pretending like everything was fine, but I wasn't fooled. I knew their every move, as I prepared for what was to come. I could feel the adrenaline starting to pump through my veins. I wasn't just fighting for revenge, I was fighting for my dignity, for my future, for the woman I wanted to become again. I wasn't going to let them win. The plan was simple, but it had to be perfect. I was going to confront them with the truth. I was going to expose Ethan for the liar he was, and Olivia for the manipulative schemer she had become. And this time, there would be no excuses. It wasn't just about telling them what they had done. It was about showing them that I wasn't the fool they thought I was, that they couldn't walk away from this unscathed. And when the truth finally came out, I would be the one standing tall, stronger than ever before. The night before the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. The anticipation was killing me. I kept replaying the scenes in my mind, imagining the look on their faces when they realized I knew everything. Part of me wanted to run, to hide, but I knew I couldn't. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The next morning, I got up early and went to the office pretending like everything was normal. I kept my head down, focused on the tasks at hand, but inside, I was a mess. The weight of the plan was bearing down on me, but I pushed through. I had made it this far. I couldn't back out now. Even called me just before noon. "Everything's in place," he said. "Are you ready?" Tori took a deep breath, the excitement and fear swirling inside me. "Let's do it." The time had come. The days that followed my discovery felt like a blur. The betrayal weighed heavy on my chest, a constant pressure that made it hard to breathe. I could barely sleep, barely eat. All I could think about was how Ethan and Olivia had manipulated me, how they had lied to my face while secretly plotting behind my back. It was all too much. I had to act fast. If I didn't, they would just keep spinning their webs of lies and deceit, and I would be the one left holding the shattered pieces of my life. Called Evan every day, sometimes twice, to go over the plan, to make sure everything was in place. My mind was set on one thing. I was going to expose Ethan and Olivia for the liars and manipulators they were, but I needed evidence. I needed to catch them red-handed. The morning came when everything would fall into place. I had been preparing for weeks, collecting anything and everything that could be used against them. Every message, every call, every detail of their plan had to be documented. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make sure they paid for what they'd done. 3 stood in front of my mirror, staring at my reflection. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't even just about justice. This was about me taking back control of my life. It was about showing Ethan and Olivia that they couldn't just tear me apart without facing the consequences. 3 walked into the living room and grabbed my phone. I texted Evan, "It's time." Minutes later, I pulled up in front of Ethan's apartment. My pulse quickened. I wasn't nervous. I was angry. Angry that it had come to this. Angry that I had trusted them, that I had let my guard down for even a second. But now, I had the upper hand, and I was going to make sure they knew it. 3 walked to the front door, my steps steady and purposeful. The key I had taken from my bag felt like a weight in my hand, a symbol of everything I had learned in these past few weeks. Ethan had trusted me with his life, his marriage, his secrets. But now, I was about to turn everything upside down. The door opened easily, and I stepped inside. The familiar smell of Ethan's cologne hit me like a wave. I had been here countless times, but now it felt different. This was no longer my home. This was a battlefield, and I was ready to fight. 3 called out, but no one answered. I knew they were here. Olivia, Ethan, and the lawyer they'd hired, they'd all be here, waiting for the moment when they thought I would finally break. But I wasn't going to break, not this time. 3 walked through the apartment, moving quietly. The sounds of hushed voices reached my ears, followed by the unmistakable sound of furniture scraping against the floor. They were preparing, gathering their things. They thought they were 1 step ahead, but they had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead of them. And then, I saw them. Ethan was standing in the kitchen talking to Olivia. They didn't notice me at first. They were too busy whispering, too busy planning their next move, but I saw everything. The way Olivia's hand rested on Ethan's arm, the way they looked at each other with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. It wasn't just betrayal, it was manipulation, control. They were both in on this, playing me like a fool. 3 cleared my throat and their heads snapped around. The shock on Ethan's face was almost satisfying. Olivia's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like a deer caught in headlights. But it was Ethan's reaction that gave me the confidence I needed. He looked guilty as hell. "What are you doing here?" Olivia asked, her voice sharp. "I think the better question is, what are you doing here?" I replied, my voice cold. "And why didn't you tell me about your little plan, Ethan?" Ethan's face paled, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "I already know everything. About you, about Olivia, about the lies you've been telling, and I'm not here to listen to excuses." Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew exactly what was coming. And that's when I pressed play on the recording. The sound of Ethan's voice crackling through the speakers filled the room, and for a brief moment both of them froze. I had set everything up perfectly, recording their conversations over the past few weeks, catching every lie, every shady remark. They had no idea how deep this went. "You never thought I would find out, did you?" I said, walking toward them. "You thought you could do whatever you wanted and I'd never catch on. But now I have everything, every message, every conversation." Ethan's face contorted with anger, but it was too late. "You're crazy," he spat. "This is just a misunderstanding." "No," I said, shaking my head. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is you and Olivia trying to destroy everything I've worked for. You think I'm just going to let that slide?" Olivia stood up suddenly, her face twisted in an expression of defiance. "You don't understand, Audrey," she said, her voice low. "We were meant to be together. Ethan and I, too enough," I interrupted, walking closer. "I don't want to hear your excuses anymore. I'm done letting you manipulate me, Ethan. I'm done being the victim in your twisted little game." And with that, I hit send. The evidence was out in the open now. Ethan and Olivia had no place to hide. "I'm taking you down," I said, watching as the realization dawned on them. "And this time, you won't get away with it." 3 turned to leave, but not before making one final statement. "I'm done being your pawn." IIAs. I stepped out of the apartment. I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders. It wasn't over yet, but I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life. Ethan and Olivia had thought they could destroy me, but in the end, I was the one who would be standing tall. The tables had turned, and I was ready for whatever came next. The phone call came the next day, just as I had expected. Ethan. I had been dreading this moment, knowing that the final confrontation was drawing near, but what surprised me was the tone of his voice. It wasn't the smug, defensive tone I had anticipated. Instead, it was shaky, uncertain, almost pleading. "Audrey, we need to talk," he said, his voice low and hesitant. Didn't even hesitate before responding. "Talk? About what, Ethan? You've already done enough damage." There was a pause, and I could almost hear him trying to find the right words. "I know you're angry, and I understand why, but I didn't think it would come to this. I didn't think you'd go this far. Don't act like you're the victim here," I snapped. "You and Olivia have been plotting behind my back for months, Ethan. I'm not the one who crossed the line." His silence only confirmed what I already knew. He had no defense left. No more excuses. He was cornered, and he knew it. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," he said finally, "but I need you to understand. I was trying to protect our family. Olivia! You don't understand her. She's been manipulating me, making me believe all these lies." 3 laughed, but it wasn't a sound of humor. It was bitter, cutting. "Really? And what was I to you, Ethan? Just a pawn in your little game. You think that by throwing me under the bus and siding with Olivia, you were protecting our family? You were just protecting yourself." There was a soft, almost desperate sound from his end of the line, but I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. "You've made your choice, Ethan," I said coldly, "and I'm done being part of your mess." 3 hung up the phone and stared at the screen for a moment. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. No, it was the rush of adrenaline. The feeling of finally taking control. I had fought for so long to make things work, to believe that Ethan would change. But the reality was clear now. He had made his bed, and it was time for him to lie in it. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I had everything I needed. The evidence, the recordings, the pictures, everything that proved Ethan's betrayal. Olivia's manipulation, and the secrets they had tried so desperately to hide. It was time to expose them once and for all. But there was one thing I had to do first. I had to confront Olivia. I had to hear her side of the story, even though I already knew the truth. I knew she would lie, spin her web of excuses, but I had to hear it from her own lips. Arranged to meet her at a cafe, the place where we used to talk about everything, back when I thought we were friends, when I thought I could trust her. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. It seemed fitting that this would be the place where everything unraveled. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She looked calm, almost too calm, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. I knew she was expecting this confrontation, but she didn't know I had everything planned. "Audrey," she greeted me, her smile almost too sweet, too rehearsed. "I'm glad you could make it." 3 sat down across from her, not bothering to return the smile. "Cut the crap, Olivia. I know everything." Her expression faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered, leaning back in her chair. "I don't know what you're talking about." 3 slid the phone across the table, the recording of her and Ethan's conversation from weeks ago, the proof of their betrayal, their lies. I watched her face as she listened to the words she had thought were safe, words that would expose her once and for all. "I knew you were planning something," I said, my voice steady. "I just didn't know it would be this much of a betrayal." She didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, staring at the phone. Her face was blank, but I could see the wheels turning in her head, calculating, thinking about her next move. But it was too late. The truth was out. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said finally, her voice tinged with panic. Ethan and I, we don't try to make excuses," I interrupted. "You've been playing me for a fool, Olivia, and I'm done. I'm done being your pawn." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not even the one who's been hurt, Audrey. You don't understand what I've had to deal with. Ethan, he's never been the man I thought he was. He's weak. And you were just in the way." Her words hit me like a slap in the face, but I wasn't going to back down. "You were never my friend, Olivia. You were just waiting for the right moment to stab me in the back. Well, you've got what you wanted. Ethan's all yours." Her face twisted, and for a moment I saw the real Olivia, angry, desperate, afraid. But it didn't matter. I had won, stood up, ready to leave. But before I did, I looked at her one last time. "I'm done with both of you, and I'm going to make sure you both pay for what you've done." 3 left the cafe and didn't look back. It was over. Ethan and Olivia had tried to destroy me, to tear my life apart. But in the end, I was the one who came out on top. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at them. It was about me reclaiming my life, my truth. And that's exactly what I did. The twist of betrayal, the manipulation, and the final reckoning brought me to a place of unexpected clarity. I had spent so much time worrying about them, trying to fix what wasn't broken, when the real solution had been in front of me all along. It wasn't about fighting for them. It was about fighting for me. 3 wasn't broken anymore. 3 was free. Strange how silence can feel like a weight, like a 1,000-pound anchor pressing down on your chest. But that's what I was left with after everything unfolded. I had expected some sort of grand explosion, a fiery confrontation where Ethan and Olivia would be forced to admit their guilt. But no, it wasn't like that. The satisfaction I'd hoped for didn't come in the form of rage or revenge. It came in the form of quiet relief. 3 had done it. I had exposed them both for who they really were, stripped away the masks they had carefully constructed. They were no longer the people I had trusted, the people I had once shared my life with. The truth had shattered their facades, and in the process, I had been set free. But that didn't mean the consequences were over. Far from it. 3 had made sure the damage wasn't just emotional. I wanted them to face the consequences of their actions. The evidence I had gathered wasn't just for my own closure. It was for the world to see. I had sent everything, the recordings, the documents, the photos, to the people who mattered, the ones who could make sure Olivia and Ethan couldn't hide behind their lies any longer. And I wasn't going to stop there. The day came when I received the call. It was from my lawyer, and I knew immediately that it was good news. The case was moving forward. The police had gathered enough evidence to charge both Olivia and Ethan. Olivia for the break-in and theft, and Ethan for his complicity and betrayal. The walls they'd built around their lies were crumbling fast. My hands shook as I hung up the phone. I wasn't shaking with fear. No, this was something else, something powerful. It was the feeling of having control over my own life again, of not being a victim to their manipulations anymore. Few days later, the court date arrived. I didn't know what to expect, but when I walked into that courtroom and saw them sitting there, Olivia and Ethan, their heads hung low, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: justice. It wasn't about seeing them suffer. It was about seeing them face the consequences of their own actions. And they did. Olivia tried to spin some story, talking about how she had been misunderstood, how she was only looking out for Ethan. But the truth was undeniable. The evidence I had presented was overwhelming, and there was no way for her to wiggle out of it. The look on Ethan's face when he realized that there was no more pretending, no more lying, was almost sad, almost. But I couldn't pity him. He had chosen this. He had sided with the person who had manipulated him into thinking that betraying me was the only way to survive. He didn't deserve my sympathy. He deserved to face the consequences. The judge's ruling came down swiftly. Both Ethan and Olivia were sentenced. Olivia for her part in the theft and break-ins, and Ethan for his betrayal and aiding her. It wasn't the most severe sentence, but it was enough. They would both have to live with what they had done. 3. Remember walking out of that courtroom, the weight lifting from my shoulders, the door to my past, the one that had been heavy with lies and pain, finally closed. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. But even though the court had given me justice, I knew there was still work to be done. I had rebuilt my life. I had reclaimed my sense of self, my peace. And now I could finally let go of the anger, the hurt, and the resentment that had been dragging me down for so long. It was time to heal. I spent the next few months focusing on myself, reconnecting with old friends, diving back into my passions, and slowly, step by step, rebuilding the life I had almost lost. I even started seeing someone new, a kind, understanding person who didn't want to control me or make me feel like I owed him anything. But that was all in the future. The real victory wasn't just in Ethan and Olivia being held accountable. The real victory was in my freedom. Freedom from the toxicity they had created in my life, freedom from the manipulation and betrayal, freedom to live for me and no one else. I walked through the park one crisp morning. A familiar face caught my eye. It was Ryan. He was sitting on a bench looking lost, as though he had been waiting for me. I could feel the old tension rising in my chest, but I was determined not to let it control me anymore. I had made my peace. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. He stood up as I approached, but I stopped him with a single look. "Don't, Ryan," I said. "Don't make this harder than it already is." He nodded, his face a mixture of regret and uncertainty. "I'm sorry, Audrey. I didn't know what I was doing." "You knew exactly what you were doing," I replied, my voice steady. "And you chose her." I thought I could fix things," he whispered, looking down at his shoes. "I was wrong." Three didn't need him to apologize. It wouldn't change anything. I had moved on. "You can't fix this, Ryan. We can't go back." Three turned away, walking down the path, feeling lighter with every step. I knew he would never understand, and that was okay. The only person I needed to understand now was myself. And for the first time, I truly did. Three had survived. I had conquered, and I was free,